London, the city once called the financial heart of the world. Morning mist curls around glass towers that once symbolized unstoppable wealth, but beneath their shine, something feels broken. Britain, the empire that industrialized the world, now faces a reckoning. For centuries, this island nation ruled oceans, built railways across continents, and minted the global currency of trust. Yet by 2030, the average British family is expected to be £1,400 poorer than they are today. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, it's not a sudden collapse, it's a slow unraveling. Families who once dreamed of home ownership now fight to heat their homes. Young graduates, burdened with debt, earn less in real terms than their parents did decades ago. It's a quiet heartbreak, the pain of decline without disaster. The numbers confirm what many already feel. The OECD ranks the UK's productivity growth among the weakest in the developed world, and real wages have barely risen since 2008. What was once a nation of builders, inventors, and traders is now haunted by stagnation, a sense that the best days lie behind. In cafes from Manchester to Glasgow, the same question echoes: how did the land that gave the world the Industrial Revolution lose its momentum? Because Britain's decline didn't happen overnight. It's the result of choices, crises, and missed opportunities that rewrote its destiny, one decade at a time. And it all begins with one moment: the 2008 financial crash. Aerial shots of Britain's skyline, glass towers glinting in the rain, cranes frozen mid-air over unfinished projects. On the surface, the United Kingdom still looks like a global powerhouse. But behind the shimmer lies a shocking truth. It is the only G7 nation that remains poorer than before the 2008 financial crisis. 17 years have passed, yet the country has never truly recovered. GDP per capita, the simplest measure of prosperity, is still lower than it was in 2007, according to the Office for National Statistics. In the same period, the United States surged ahead, Germany regained strength, and even Italy, once called Europe's sick man, outperformed Britain. For ordinary citizens, that economic stagnation feels personal. It's the quiet exhaustion of working harder, paying more, and getting less. Real wages, adjusted for inflation, have barely moved in nearly 2 decades. The OECD ranks the UK's productivity growth among the weakest of all advanced economies, a nation stuck in neutral while its peers accelerate forward. Each passing year without growth compounds the damage: fewer investments, slower innovation, and a generation that no longer believes effort guarantees reward. The optimism that once defined British life has been replaced by resignation. People don't talk about getting ahead anymore, just trying to stay afloat. But what caused this strange paralysis? How did the world's first industrial nation lose its ability to grow? To understand that, we have to look deeper into the wage and productivity trap. Rain falls softly over a British high street, shop windows half empty, help-wanted signs fading in the drizzle. Inside, workers count hours, not progress, because for millions, wages in Britain have been frozen in time. In 2025, real wages remain below their pre-2008 peak, according to the Office for National Statistics, nearly 2 decades without true growth. That means, after adjusting for inflation, the average worker earns less today than they did when the iPhone was first released. The reason lies in a single word economists keep repeating: productivity. Productivity is the value each worker creates per hour. In the UK, it has barely moved since 2008, rising at only 0.3% a year, one of the slowest rates in the developed world. Per the OECD, for the ordinary worker, this isn't an economic puzzle, it's a lived struggle. They work longer hours than their counterparts in France or Germany, yet produce and earn less. Factories use outdated machinery, public transport slows commutes, and underinvestment in training leaves millions underskilled. Britain's economy, once built on innovation, now feels trapped by hesitation, a nation running hard on a treadmill that never moves forward. It's not laziness, it's limitation, an economy starved of tools to grow. And while wages stagnate, the cost of life climbs higher, tightening the grip of this invisible trap. But beyond paychecks and percentages, what's at stake is deeper: the living standards of an entire nation. A single mother in Birmingham scrolls through her energy bill, her breath fogging the cold air of an unheated flat. A pensioner in Leeds skips dinner to afford medication. Across Britain, these are not isolated stories, they're the new normal. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation's 2025 report, The average UK family is projected to be £1,400 poorer by 2030, while the poorest third will lose around 6% of their disposable income. Behind these figures lies a quiet national emergency. Rents have climbed to record highs, food prices have surged more than 25% since 2021, and energy costs remain nearly double their pre-pandemic levels. For millions, paydays no longer mean relief, they mean survival. It's the kind of exhaustion that doesn't make headlines, but breaks households from the inside out. This isn't a temporary cost of living crisis, it's structural decay. The Office for Budget Responsibility warns that living standards are set to fall for a second consecutive decade, the longest decline in modern British history. Once, hard work promised stability. Now, even full-time jobs can't guarantee warmth or dignity. Supermarket aisles tell the story best: shrinking products, higher prices, and empty baskets. Every statistic is a life reshaped by scarcity. The nation that once built empires now counts coins at checkout counters. And yet, this collapse didn't happen by chance. It was the consequence of choices, political, financial, and moral. To see where the decline truly began, we must go back to the shocks that broke Britain's economic foundation. Fog rolls over the Thames as the city skyline flickers, a symbol of power dimming through time. Britain's economic story since 2008 isn't one of a single failure, but a chain reaction. Each crisis, one link tightening around a struggling nation. It began with the 2008 global financial crash, a collapse that hit London harder than most, wiping out nearly 6% of the UK's GDP in a single year. Banks were rescued, but growth never truly returned. Then came austerity, cutting deep into public investment just when the country needed rebuilding. By 2015, productivity had flatlined and wages were frozen in time. For millions, the dream of progress faded into quiet frustration. Next, the shock of Brexit, uncertainty that shattered investor confidence and fractured supply chains. The OECD later reported that the UK's trade openness fell by nearly 10%, the steepest decline among advanced economies. Add the pandemic, the energy crisis, and inflation that surged beyond 11% in 2022, and the cracks became fault lines. But this wasn't just economics, it was identity. The nation that once ruled, markets began struggling to feed its own ambitions. The British economy turned inward, slower, more fragile, caught in a cycle of reaction rather than renewal. Now, the question haunting Westminster and the working class alike is the same. Was this decline inevitable, or was it engineered by decades of wrong turns? The answer lies in how Britain lost control of its own growth engine, productivity. Rain lashes against the glass towers of Canary Wharf. Inside, traders stare at blinking red screens, the numbers falling faster than anyone can comprehend. In 2008, the heart of Britain's financial empire flatlined. What began as a housing crash in America detonated into a full-blown banking collapse in London, the city that had once been the world's financial capital. Within months, giants like RBS and Lloyds were on life support, forcing the government into a £137 billion bailout, one of the largest in modern history. The IMF later confirmed that the UK's economy shrank by nearly 6% in 2009, its deepest contraction since World War II. Families watched in disbelief as pensions evaporated, jobs disappeared, and hope quietly left the room. The shock went deeper than money. Britain's prosperity had been built on finance, a sector that made up over 10% of GDP, and now that foundation had cracked. With investment drying up, businesses closed and wages froze, trapping millions in economic limbo. The illusion of endless growth had shattered, replaced by anxiety and austerity. By 2010, a new political narrative took hold. To save Britain, it must cut back. Public services shrank, infrastructure stalled, and the dream of recovery became a distant echo. The first blow had landed, but no one knew it was only the beginning, because just beyond the rubble of the banks, a deeper, slower economic decay was about to begin. The echoes of the financial crash still hung in the air. London's skyline glittered with glass towers, but beneath it, Britain was tightening its belt. In 2010, austerity became the new creed, a promise to restore order by cutting deep. What began as fiscal discipline soon became an economic amputation. Public investment, once the engine of progress, was slashed by more than 40% over the next decade. According to the UK Office for Budget Responsibility, local councils lost half their budgets. Libraries closed, buses disappeared, and infrastructure projects were shelved. For millions, it felt as though the country had pressed pause on its own future. The IMF later warned that Britain's austerity slowed its recovery by years, costing the economy an estimated 2 to 3% of potential growth. Productivity stagnated, real wages barely moved, and the very services that sustained working families began to crumble. People didn't just lose income, they lost confidence in tomorrow. The irony was cruel. The nation that once built railways across continents couldn't repair its own roads. Instead of investing in innovation, Britain cut education, research, and regional development, the very foundations of long-term strength. By the mid-2010s, inequality had widened, and resentment simmered quietly across forgotten towns. What began as a plan to fix the books had drained the lifeblood of growth itself, and as Britain entered the next decade, a new storm loomed, one not born of banks or budgets, but of politics and borders. Fog settles over Dover's white cliffs as a line of trucks stands still, engines humming, papers waiting to be checked. This was the new border Britain had fought to reclaim, a symbol of sovereignty, and a wall against its own prosperity. In 2016, the nation voted to leave the European Union, the largest trading bloc in the world. The promise was freedom, control, and rebirth. But the economic reality would prove far harsher. The Office for Budget Responsibility (OBR) estimates that Brexit has reduced the UK's long-term productivity by 4%, and trade volumes remain 15% lower than if Britain had stayed in the EU. For businesses, it wasn't independence they felt, it was isolation. Foreign investment fell sharply as uncertainty spread. Factories that once shipped freely across Europe faced new tariffs, paperwork, and delays. The OECD reported that by 2023, Britain's trade intensity exports plus imports as a share of GDP had fallen faster than any other G7 economy. For many, the dream of taking back control became the struggle to simply stay afloat. From fisheries in Cornwall to finance in London, industries adjusted, not by growing, but by shrinking. The pound weakened, inflation rose, and growth slowed. Sovereignty had been won, but at a heavy economic cost. And as Britain tried to rebuild its footing in a fractured world, another storm approached: the pandemic, a crisis that would test the nation's resilience like never before. Empty streets, silent high streets, airplanes grounded across Heathrow's runways. In 2020, Britain came to a halt. The pandemic didn't just freeze daily life, it froze an economy already weakened by a decade of austerity and the aftershocks of Brexit. The lockdowns were among the longest in Europe, and the toll was staggering. According to the Office for National Statistics, the UK economy shrank by nearly 10% in 2020, the deepest contraction in over 300 years. Businesses collapsed overnight, and public debt soared to more than 100% of GDP. For millions, the silence of those months wasn't just about isolation, it was about fear of losing everything they'd built. The government spent over £400 billion in emergency support, from furloughs to stimulus programs. But beneath the relief lay a darker truth. Those measures masked structural fragilities, stagnant productivity, regional inequality, and dependence on consumer debt. When the world reopened, Britain faced inflation, worker shortages, and a shrinking labor force. It wasn't just recovery Britain needed, it was reinvention. The pandemic exposed what decades of policy had hidden: an economy too fragile to withstand a storm. Even as restrictions lifted, growth limped, and living costs soared faster than wages. The scars of COVID weren't temporary. They deepened the divides already tearing through the country. And just as Britain began to breathe again, another shockwave hit, an energy crisis that would drag the nation into its harshest winter yet. London, 2025. The lights still glow across the Thames. But behind the shimmer lies a truth too heavy to ignore. Britain is living on borrowed time and borrowed money. National debt now hovers around 100% of GDP, the highest sustained level in modern peacetime. Interest payments alone consume more than the entire education budget. According to the UK Office for Budget Responsibility, the government calls it fiscal discipline, but the numbers tell a different story. A nation caught between servicing debt and funding its own future. Departments slash spending to meet fiscal rules, hospitals delay repairs, and local councils edge toward bankruptcy. For ordinary families, the cuts aren't abstract, they're the pothole on the road, the closed library, the school with fewer teachers, the IMF warns that Britain's public finances are now among the most strained in the G7. Rising interest rates have turned every pound of borrowing into a weight dragging down investment. Growth has flatlined, wages have stagnated, and the dream of levelling up has faded into rhetoric. People are no longer asking when Britain will recover, they're asking if it even can. Once, debt was a weapon Britain used to build empires, railways, and innovation. Today, it's a chain tightening with every budget cut and every missed opportunity. And as the nation looks toward the next decade, one haunting question remains: what happens when the debt becomes too heavy to carry? Dawn breaks over London's skyline, cranes frozen mid-air, half-built towers looming over streets lined with for sale signs few can afford to read. Britain's housing dream has turned into its deepest social fracture. In 2025, the average UK house price stands at over £280,000, while the median income struggles to keep up. The Office for National Statistics reports that home ownership among young adults has fallen from 65% in 1992 just 36% today. Mortgage rates, once under 2%, have soared past 6%, pushing even middle-income earners out of reach. For many, the dream of owning a home has faded into something almost mythical, a privilege, not a right. Rents, too, have spiraled beyond control. According to OECD housing data, UK renters now spend nearly 40% of their income just keeping a roof overhead, one of the highest ratios in Europe. Landlords thrive, while tenants stretch every paycheck to survive. The crisis isn't just about money, it's about belonging. About a generation that feels permanently adrift in its own country. Behind every statistic is a story. Young couples moving back in with parents, families pushed out of cities they helped build, workers commuting hours each day because housing near jobs is unaffordable. This is no longer a housing market, it's an economic trap. And as prices rise and wages freeze, one question lingers over Britain's skyline. How can a nation thrive when its own people can't afford to live in it? Private jets lift off from Farnborough under a grey English sky, one by one, symbols of wealth taking flight. But this isn't business as usual, it's an exodus. The people once driving Britain's prosperity are quietly leaving it behind. Since 2017, the Henley Private Wealth Migration Report estimates that over 16,000 millionaires have left the UK, one of the largest outflows in the world. The reasons: rising taxes, political instability, and fears of long-term decline. London, once the beating heart of global finance, has begun to lose its luster. For the elite, patriotism now ends where the profit margin begins. Investment firms relocate to Dublin, Paris, and Amsterdam. Skilled professionals, doctors, engineers, and tech workers look abroad for opportunity. The OECD reports that the UK's foreign direct investment inflows have fallen by nearly 70% since 2016, one of the sharpest drops among advanced economies. For those left behind, feels like the lights of ambition are dimming one by one. What's leaving isn't just money, it's momentum. The departure of capital erodes innovation, weakens job creation, and deepens inequality. The irony is cruel. The country that once attracted global wealth now watches it escape offshore. And as Britain's richest quietly move their fortunes and futures elsewhere, a haunting question remains over the city that once ruled world finance. If capital no longer believes in Britain, who will? The skyline of London once symbolized ambition, glass towers reflecting a nation open for business. But today, that shine hides a quiet erosion. The UK, once one of the world's most competitive economies, is sliding down the ranks. According to the IMD World Competitiveness Report, Britain has fallen from the top 10 in 2016 to below 30th place by 2024, overtaken by countries it once advised on economic reform. The Heritage Foundation's Economic Freedom Index now places the UK behind not just Germany or Canada, but even small economies like Estonia. Heavy regulation, high corporate taxes, and policy uncertainty have made Britain one of the hardest places in the G7 to do business. For entrepreneurs, it feels like ambition now comes with a penalty. The corporate tax rate, raised to 25% in 2023, and complex post-Brexit red tape have driven firms to relocate production to the EU. Productivity has stagnated for more than a decade, and investment as a share of GDP remains one of the lowest in the developed world. Behind every policy decision lies a sense of lost direction. a country unsure of what kind of economy it wants to be. Once a magnet for innovation and talent, Britain now finds itself competing not to lead, but to keep up. And as each year passes, the world's investors are asking a question Britain never thought it would face. Has the UK quietly priced itself out of its own future? The hum of government fills the air, departments, agencies, and ministries all trying to hold a fragile system together. From health to housing, from defence to debt, the British state has grown larger than ever, and yet it feels weaker than before. By 2025, public spending consumes around 45% of GDP, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility, one of the highest shares in the nation's post-war history. The welfare system, the NHS, and aging infrastructure demand more every year, while tax revenues struggle to keep pace. For ordinary citizens, it feels like paying more for a state that delivers less. The IMF warns that such a structure is unsustainable without higher productivity or painful cuts. Britain now borrows just to stand still, spending billions not on progress, but on maintaining what already exists. Public sector wages lag, hospitals face record waiting lists, and yet government payrolls have never been bigger. It's a paradox that cuts deep, the sense of being governed by a state too large to reform, yet too essential to shrink. The expanding state was meant to protect, to shield citizens from crisis. But as the costs mount, that shield begins to crack. Britain faces a choice: continue feeding a system that can no longer afford itself, or confront the difficult truth about what must change. And that truth grows louder with each passing year. How long can Britain keep spending what it no longer earns? Rain falls over a London street as commuters rush past dimly lit shops. The price of everything feels heavier now. Groceries that once filled a basket barely cover a bag. Energy bills arrive like unwanted letters of reality. The struggle is quiet but universal. Britain's middle class is shrinking, and the cost of simply living has become unbearable for millions. According to the Office for National Statistics, real wages in the UK have fallen by nearly 3% since 2021. When adjusted for inflation, one of the sharpest declines among major economies. Prices rose faster than pay, while stealth taxes like frozen income thresholds quietly pulled more workers into higher tax brackets. Families aren't just cutting luxuries anymore. They're cutting essentials, warmth, nutrition, and sometimes dignity. The OECD reports that the UK's inflation rate in 2023 remained above the G7 average, driven by energy shocks and Brexit-related import costs. Even as global inflation eased, Britain's prices lingered, eroding the value of every pound earned. For many, promotions or pay raises no longer mean progress, they simply mean survival. It's a nation where effort no longer guarantees comfort, and resilience feels like punishment. The cost of living crisis isn't just economic, it's emotional. It's changing how Britons see work, government, and even their future. And behind closed doors, a dangerous question echoes louder than ever. If the UK can't protect its own citizens' living standards, can it still call itself a global power?
The skyline of New York glows with the energy of a nation still in motion. A place where capital, technology, and ambition collide. Across the Atlantic, London's financial district tells a quieter story, one of legacy, not momentum. Once, Britain led the global economy. Now, it watches as the United States defines IT. At the heart of this divergence lies the power of the dollar. According to the IMF, over 58% of global foreign reserves are still held in US dollars, granting Washington an unmatched economic shield. Meanwhile, the pound, once a pillar of empire, has steadily weakened, losing more than 20% of its value since 2016. For Britons, it feels like watching history slip through their fingers, a slow, painful reminder that influence fades when innovation stalls. The US tech boom reshaped the 21st century economy. Silicon Valley alone created more trillion-dollar companies than all of Europe combined. Britain, bound by regulation and cautious investment, missed that wave. American fiscal policy, though bold, allowed rapid recovery after crises. The UK, burdened by austerity, recovered slower. While the US built the future, Britain managed the past. This gap isn't just in GDP, it's in confidence. America reinvents itself every decade. Britain debates how to remember its last. And as global power shifts further west, one haunting question remains. Can Britain ever catch up again, or has the age of British leadership quietly ended? A cold sunrise over Oslo. Snow glistens on glass towers, each one, in a sense, owned by the Norwegian people. Because beneath the surface of this small nation lies not just oil, but vision. In the 1990s, Norway made a choice that would rewrite its destiny, to save its oil wealth for future generations. Today, its sovereign wealth fund stands above $1.5 trillion, according to the IMF, owning roughly 1.5% of all global stocks. Every Norwegian, in theory, is a shareholder in the world. Britain, too, struck oil in the North Sea, but instead of saving, it spent. The revenues of the 1980s flowed into tax cuts and consumption, not long-term investment. For many Britons, that lost opportunity feels like a betrayal. The wealth was real, but it never built a future. Meanwhile, nations like Qatar and the UAE followed Norway's model, building massive funds that now buy global influence, from skyscrapers in London to tech startups in Silicon Valley. Britain, once the empire that financed the world, now rents out its crown jewels to others. The contrast is painful and revealing. Norway turned finite oil into infinite returns. Britain turned its own boom into a memory. It's not just about money. It's about foresight, discipline, and the courage to plan for tomorrow. And as the UK faces another fiscal storm, one question grows louder. What happens when a nation runs out of both wealth and vision? A gray morning over London. Crowds of young commuters move through the underground. Faces tired, phones glowing, dreams on hold. This is the generation that was told to work hard and you'll make it. But for millions, that promise has quietly expired. According to the OECD, real wages for Britons under 35 are lower today than they were in 2008. The cost of rent has soared by more than 25% since 2020, and the average home now costs over 9 times the median income, one of the worst ratios in the developed world. For young people, the math simply doesn't work. Many delay marriage, skip children, or move back with parents. The ladder of opportunity their parents climbed has vanished into thin air. And behind every statistic is a quiet ache. A graduate with 3 jobs, a couple giving up on a home, a dream deferred indefinitely. Economic mobility, once Britain's pride, is fading. The Institute for Fiscal Studies warns that today's youth may become the first generation in modern history to be poorer than their parents. The nation that built the Industrial Revolution now risks losing its next one, not for lack of talent, but for lack of access and hope. As Britain's young slip further from the future they were promised, one haunting question remains. How long can a country survive when its next generation stops believing in tomorrow? Fog rolls across the Thames as Westminster's lights flicker in the distance, a symbol of a nation uncertain of its path. Britain stands at an economic crossroads. One road paved with short-term political fixes, the other with the difficult, patient work of rebuilding power. For years, governments have chosen the quick path: temporary tax cuts, subsidies, and reactive spending. Yet these measures barely patch the cracks. The IMF estimates the UK's productivity growth has averaged just 0.3% annually since 2010, far below the OECD average. The engines of growth, innovation, education, infrastructure remain underpowered. The feeling on the streets mirrors the numbers. People sense the stagnation, the sense that Britain is managing decline rather than designing recovery. Every generation asks, who will invest in the future if the state itself has stopped believing in one? But there is another road. Investment in green energy, AI, biotech, and advanced manufacturing could reignite Britain's competitive edge. The World Bank notes that nations investing over 4% of GDP in R&D are seeing faster recoveries and wage growth. The UK invests just half that. This is the moment that defines eras, whether Britain becomes the architect of a new industrial revolution or the curator of its own decline. And as global powers race toward the industries of tomorrow, one question echoes louder than ever. Will Britain choose ambition or survival. A grey dawn breaks over the North Sea, once the heart of Britain's oil wealth. Billions once flowed from beneath those waters, enough to transform generations. But instead of being invested for the future, much of it was spent year by year to balance budgets and fund short-term needs. While Norway built the government pension fund Global, now worth over $1.6 trillion, one of the largest in the world, the United Kingdom built no such shield. The OECD notes that had Britain saved even a fraction of its North Sea revenues since the 1980s, it could have accumulated a sovereign wealth fund exceeding £500 billion today, a financial fortress against today's debt and crises. For many Britons, this is the most painful what-if, a chance not just to secure the nation's balance sheet, but to protect future generations from austerity, recessions, and instability, lost to the politics of the moment. Today, nations from Qatar to Singapore use sovereign funds to invest globally, earning billions in returns that strengthen domestic resilience. Britain, once the empire that financed the world, now borrows from it. The contrast is stark and sobering. The idea of a British wealth fund still surfaces in policy circles, but each year the opportunity grows smaller, the urgency greater. Because the question is no longer what Britain could have built, but whether it's already too late to start building it now.